ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतश्च अर्थेषु अभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदाय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुकमुखादमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः. We now enter the 23rd chapter of the 8th Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the last chapter in the story of Lord Vamana Avatar and Bali Chakravarti getting the benediction of Vamana. So we saw in the last chapter how after putting him to test, the Lord blessed him in the highest terms, saying that Bali has already crossed over Maya in demonstrating his supreme devotion, and therefore he shall be blessed. He shall first go to the subterranean region called Sutala, and after spending this Manvantara there, he shall be Indra in the next Manvantara, and then he shall ascend to Vaikuntha. So now Shuka Brahma Rishi continues. After Bhagavan has spoken thus, the great Bali, he had his palms joined and his voice was choking, his eyes were filled with tears and his throat was choking. So he was completely moved. We can see the beauty of the devotion and surrender of Bali, the one who was put to the supreme test and who remained completely surrendered, humble, and composed. And now he is filled with such love at hearing the highest blessing from Bhagavan. It says, Iti uktavantam purusham puratanam mahanubhavo akhila sadhu sammatah baddha anjalir bhashpa kala kulekshano bhakti udgalo gadgadaya gira bravit. Every word of this verse is so beautiful. Shuka Brahma Rishi says, after hearing this, Mahanubhavaha, the great, magnanimous, the one with the highest experience of Bhagavan, who's Bali, who's Akhila Sadhu Sammataha, who's revered by all the great souls and saints, that's why he's called a Mahajan. He spoke to Purusham Puratanam, the Supreme Lord, the most ancient being, with his eyes filled with tears and his voice choking. He says, O Lord, I only made a sincere effort to keep my word, and by being at your lotus feet, and you have been so merciful that you have bestowed such a high benediction on me, who can never truly claim to be your devotee. So this is the true position of a great devotee, is that he never thinks he is qualified as a great devotee. He always thinks he is not situated in devotion, he is not worthy of the grace and the mercy of the Lord, and it is only the undeserving, causeless mercy of the Lord that's lifting him up, not any effort of himself, not any qualification of himself. This is the true mark of a humble devotee with no ego. He does not ascribe any value to his sadhana, his effort. He simply honors Bhagavan because that is the truth. Because even if one has done any sadhana, that sadhana is itself the grace of Bhagavan. One cannot do sadhana without the grace of Bhagavan. The very thought of Bhagavan comes only because of the grace of Bhagavan, and any realization comes only out of the grace of Bhagavan. Therefore, to think that one has done any sadhana, one deserves anything, is only the sign of ego and arrogance. And Bali, being the highest devotee, he says, I can never claim to be your devotee, and I simply wanted to be at your lotus feet, and I made whatever effort I can. And for this, You have given me the highest benediction. You have given that boon which is sought for by all devotees of you. You have also bestowed a demon like me, because he is referring to the fact that he is born in the race of demons, as did Prahlad. And he says, even though I am born in a demon race, you have bestowed your unique favor, which is so rare to get even to demigods. So again, this gives multiple lessons. One is the humility of Bali, but also the other is that birth and pedigree and learning is all of no qualification, is of no value, and anybody is able to take the grace of Bhagavan by simply sincerely surrendering. If a demon born as a demon race, in the demon race like Bali, and before him Prahlad can realize the Supreme Lord, then anybody can. So when he says this, Shuka Brahma Rishi says, after that he bowed low again to Sri Hari, who is in the form of a Vamana. And then there was assembled Brahma himself, as we saw. Lord Shiva had come there. He offered his obeisances to all the assembled great beings, and then he got ready to retire to Sutala, the third region below earth. It is, as we said, Atala, Vitala, Sutala. Sutala is the third region, which has been promised to be like heaven, being architected by Vishwakarma. So it says, Shuka Brahma Rishi says, Iti Uktva Harim Anamya Brahmanam Sabhavam Tataha Vivesha Sutalam Prito Bhalir Muktaha Saha Asuraihi. So Brahmanam means Brahma, Sabhavam. Bhava means the one who is the source of the universe, which refers to Shiva here. So Bhagavatam always beautifully refers to Shiva as Bhava. Bhava is a word that means the very process of becoming the source of the universe is Shiva, and Hari, the Supreme Being. So he offers obeisances to the Trinity, and he gets ready to retire to Sutala. So thus, the pastime of Vamana is coming to an end. He has, on the one hand, restored the kingdom of heaven to Indra, and thereby fulfilled the desire of Aditi, the mother. And on the other hand, he has given the greatest benediction to Bali. So we see how the pastime of the Lord, the avatar of the Lord, is beautiful for everyone. So we saw that Aditi did the Payovrita. We saw that whole procedure that was taught by Kashyapa, where she was on a milk only diet and she kept a strict vow praying to Bhagavan. And she had only one desire, which is that all the demigods be restored back to heaven. And so Bhagavan was born to her, and he kept the word of what he had told Aditi. Brihaspati, the guru of the Devas, had told that there will come a time when Bali will disobey his gurus, and thereby he will fall down. That was also made true by Bhagavan by putting him in a situation where he had to disobey his guru. And Indra, who wanted to regain the heavenly kingdom, was given the heavenly kingdom. And Bali, who was stripped of this heavenly kingdom, yet was given the highest benediction and made known as the greatest devotee. So everyone, Aditi, Indra, Kashyapa, Brihaspati, and Bali, most importantly, were all happy and glorified in their own way, with Bali being the most glorified with this pastime by Lord Vamana. And because he was born after Indra to Aditi, and he restored Indra to the heavenly kingdom, he is also called as Upendra. So we saw that Indra was the 11th Aditya, and the 12th Aditya was Bhagavan as Vamana. So Upendra means one who comes after Indra. In this avatar, he comes after Indra as the son of Aditi. So he is also called Upendra, which is a fairly famous name as well of Bhagavan. And Trivikrama, because he took 3 strides to cover the earth, the universe, and finally offer Bali his liberation. So now, seeing his grandson Bali, who was first put in bondage and now received the grace of the Lord, Prahlada was there, and he was fully steeped in devotion as always. And with great devotion, Prahlada spoke, again glorifying the Lord beautifully. He says, "Your feet are adored by everyone, starting from Brahma to all the devotees, and you are the goal of every saint, sage, yogi, jnani, bhakta, and so on. And yet you have agreed to not only bestow such a beautiful benediction on Bali, but you have said you will protect that realm as the Palaka. In fact, the word that is used is Durga Pala. So Durga Pala means one who takes care or one who protects the kingdom like a fort does. So because Bhagavan said, O Bali, you go to Sutala, and there I shall personally protect you. My Sudarshana Chakra will protect that realm. Nobody will harm that realm in any way, and you shall feel my personal presence there, and not a single negative thought would even arise. So it will be essentially, for all practical purposes, as good as Vaikuntha. So this benediction was given by Bhagavan that he will be the guardian, the Durga Pala for the Sutala region. And so Prahlada says, nobody has got this benediction. Even the great beings don't get this benediction where they get their own region, which you protect with your personal grace. So this is undeserving on the face of it for people like us who are born in the demon race, because Prahlad also, being the grandfather of Bali and being born in the same demon race, he says, even though we are born in the demon race and we are by nature wicked and we are by nature drawn to evil ways and passion, you have somehow, first of all, given us devotion, and by your grace we got devotion, and now by your grace you are giving us this highest benediction. This is the grace that everyone is after. He says, Yat pada padma makaranda nishevanena brahmadaya sharanada ashnuvante vibhutihi. So starting from Brahma, who goes about the whole creation, to all the beings, they simply drink the nectar that comes from the lotus feet of yours, and by that they surrender unto you, and by that they get all their opulences, their powers. And you have bestowed all this to us who are born in this demon race. You have released so many wonderful pastimes through so many worlds through your own Maya, being omniscient, being the self of all beings, being the self of the universe. And you regard everyone with the same eye. You are very impartial to all, and yet you are always fond of your devotees, and you have again proved this with this gesture. So, in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says in the 9th chapter, Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshyo asti na priyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. He says, I am the same, I am even eyed towards everyone. Samoham sarva bhuteshu. There is no one who is either dear to me or no one who is not dear to me. However, he says, one who adores me with love, bhajanti mam bhaktya, he is easily available and I am easily available to him. So this can be understood very simply in a beautiful example of how sunlight is same to everyone. The sun shines uniformly to everyone, and therefore the sun is impartial, and yet the lotus flower that turns towards the sun blooms. The one who opens the eyes to the sun gets the light. The one who turns away from the sun does not get the same effect. So the sun is impartial, and yet the one who turns towards it gets more benefit out of it. Similarly, Krishna says in this verse that I am equal to all, and yet one who adores me with love, to him I am easily available. And that's exactly what Prahlad says here. You are impartial, being the self of all beings. You regard everyone with the same eye, and you have the same disposition, and yet you are always seen as being fond of your devotees by giving them your highest benevolence and benediction. And this wonderful gesture you have now told to Bali is a proof of that. You are the essential wish yielding tree that anyone who turns to you with sincerity can get it. So, even if there is a wish yielding tree, if only one turns to it with faith and sincerity, Shraddha, then one can avail of it. So, just like that, you are the wish shielding tree for everyone. Everyone, any living entity can turn to you, and anyone who turns to you with love, you give them this highest benediction. So, Bhagavan looks at Prahlada with love and he says, Vatsa Prahlada Bhadram te prayahi sutalalayam. He says, my dear beloved Prahlada, may all be well with you. You also go to Sutala region with your grandson and you can be there in delight with darshan of me daily. He says, Nityam drishtasi mam tatra gadapanim avasthitam. You can see me always. Nityam means eternally. You can see me there holding a mace in my hand, gadapani, and thereby you can be with your grandson and with all the devotees who are inclined towards me, and you can have my darshan and live there practically like Vaikuntha. So Shuka Brahma Rishi says, hearing the command of the Lord, Prahlad said, very happy to hear so. He is bowing down with joint palms to express his happiness at this wonderful blessing of Bhagavan. And this great being, he walked around the most ancient person, Bhagavan, and permitted by him, he withdrew to the subterranean region Sutala along with Bali. So it says, Parikramya Adi Purusham Sarva Asura Chamupatihi Pranatastad Anugnataha Pravivesha Mahabalim. So along with Mahabali, the great Bali, his grandson, this great being, Prahlada, went to the subterranean region Sutala as ordained by the Lord. And thereupon, Lord Vishnu, who has this most beautiful lotus-like countenance, who is Narayana, he spoke to Shukracharya, who was there, now turning to him and said, O great Brahmana, now complete whatever was left incomplete by the ritual that your disciple was doing, because it is only proper that any ritual is brought to its right completion. So as we can recall, there was this beautiful sacrifice that was going on, headed by Shukracharya and conducted by Bali. And in the middle of it, Bhagavan came, and then this whole pastime was enacted, wherein Bhagavan asked for 3 paces of land, and thereby we saw Bali getting this highest benediction. And now Bali and Prahlad have gone to the subterranean region. They have left everything along with Bali, his wife, Prahlad, all the demons who were favorably disposed. They all got this benediction and they all got to go to Sutala, the region where they can adore the Lord for this whole Manvantara. Here, in fact, there is a side note. It is said by some folks, there is a legend, it is not mentioned in Bhagavatam, that because of the love for Bali, Bali comes out of his subterranean region back to earth in spirit once a year, and that time is considered as Onam. There is a famous festival in the south, in Kerala especially, called Onam, which is celebrated, and that Onam simply marks the visit of the beloved Bali back to the earthly region once a year out of a boon that was bestowed to him, and then he goes back to Sutala, where he abides in the heavenly region of Sutala with nitya darshan, eternal vision of the Lord. So that's the legend behind the Onam festival, which is very famous in the southern part of Kerala, that is, in southern part of India. So in any case, Bali and Prahlad have now gone to Sutala, and Bhagavan turns to Shukracharya now, who is the head of the Yajna, and he says, Bhagavan being Yajna Purusha, Bhagavan is the embodiment of Yajna. So he says it is proper that you complete the Yajna. Now Shukracharya, he replies here, he beautifully says, How can there be any defect in any sacrificial performance when you are there? Because you are the deity that presides over all sacrifices, and you have been honored here in person. What more is needed? He says, Yajñesho Yajñapurushaha Sarvabhavena Pujitaha. So you are the Lord of Yajñas and you are Yajña itself, and you have come here in person. You have been worshipped by Bali, and therefore, what more is there to be done? Also, the very chanting of your name, the very taking of your holy name removes all defects in terms of any mistake with pronunciation of the mantras, the procedure, the time, place, any of that. He says, mantra tas tantra tas chidram desha kala arha vastutah sarvam karoti nishichadram nama sankirtanam tava. He says, whatever mistake one has done in any aspect of yajna or any procedure, any ritual, it is neutralized, and in fact more than neutralized, by the Nama Sankirtanam, by taking your holy name. So Shukracharya here, as we saw, Shukracharya is no ordinary sage, he is a great sage. Bhagavan said in Bhagavad Gita, Kavinam Ushana Kavihi, he says, I am of all seers, I am Ushana Shukracharya. So Shukracharya has this great vision, and that's why he was able to correctly foresee that Vishnu has come in this form. He was doing his duty by what he thought was protecting his disciple Bali. Of course, he was short-sighted in that he did not recognize that surrendering to Bhagavan is much greater than protecting one's life and possessions, and therefore that was what Bali did. But Shukracharya otherwise reveres Bhagavan, and therefore he says, you have come here, you have enacted this pastime, you have also taught me a lesson here, and you have given the greatest benediction to my disciple Bali. And now what more needs to be done, because everything is taken care by your very presence and your holy name. And yet he says, because he is a properly learned Brahmana, he says, because you have said so, since you are the one saying this, I shall do your bidding and I shall obey your command and complete the ritual. And saying thus, Ushana or Shukracharya, with the help of the other Brahmana sages, completed the sacrificial performance as per the right procedure. Thus, Bhagavan, Lord Sri Hari, having taken the kingdom from the demons by being disguised as a dwarf, Vamana, gave it back to his elder brother, as it were, Indra. So Indra being his elder brother in this avatar, he is called Upendra, and therefore there is gratification for Kashyapa and Aditi. All the beings such as Brahma and all the rishis are all gratified. Sanat Kumara and all the sages are gratified. Lord Shiva himself is gratified, and everybody is happy to see this wonderful pastime of Lord, and they consider Bhagavan again to be the supreme true ruler of the universe. Lokanam Lokapalanam Akarod Vamanam Patim. So the reality is Bhagavan is the only true owner, controller, and proprietor of the universe. It is only an appearance that Bali was ruling, and now it is only an appearance that Indra is ruling. Through it all, the true owner of it is Bhagavan alone. So that is what all the great beings asserted there, that it may have changed hands to Indra, but the true owner is you, O Vamana, O Bhagavan. So they also say that you are the custodian of all the Vedas, of all the Devatas, of Dharma or righteousness itself, of all the wealth, of all the sacred vows of heaven, of final beatitude, and therefore everything belongs only to you. They say, Vedanam, Sarva Devanam, Dharmasya Yashasah Shreyah, Mangalanam, Vritanam cha Kalpam, Swarga Apavargayoho. So everything, Vedas, the demigods, Dharma, fame, auspiciousness, vows, time, heaven, earth, everything belongs to you, O Vamana, O Bhagavan. You are the protector of all beings, and therefore they say Upendram Kalpayas Chakre Patim Sarva Vibhutaye. So in this way they were very happy to glorify Upendra, who is Vamana, who is Trivikrama. Then after this pastime was completed, everybody retired to their own abode. Indra ascended to the heaven. Shiva went to his abode. Sanat Kumara and the sages went to his abode. And everybody, after glorifying Lord Vamana and celebrating this entire pastime, returned each to their own sphere. And thus came to end this entire pastime and this Vamana Avatar. So Shukabra Maharishi concludes by saying, thus the story of Lord Vishnu of wide strides that takes away the sins of anyone who listens to it has been narrated to you. He says, Sarvam etan maya akyatam bhavatah kulanandana urukramasya charitam shrotrinam agamochanam. So all the sins are removed of anyone who listens to this story of Urukrama. This charitam means this history, this episode of Urukrama. Then he says, Shukabra Maharishi says, in reality, nobody can actually glorify the Lord. Nobody can recount the glories of Bhagavan because it is similar to counting the number of particles of dust in the universe, which is impossible. And therefore, we can only glorify to whatever extent we can. And one of the best ways to glorify, he says, is to listen to this beautiful story because it not only glorifies Bhagavan, but it glorifies the great devotee Bali, through which Bhagavan is even more glorified. The highest benediction given to Bali shows the grace of Bhagavan. So, Vamana's avatar is such a wonderful avatar that Shukabara Maharishi concludes by saying, Yaidam Devadevasya Harer Adbhuta Karmanaha Avataranucharitam Shrunuvan Yati Param Gatim. He says, anyone who listens to this beautiful story of the descent of Vamana, of Sri Hari, he attains the highest state. So this is the Phalashruti, the blessing for having listened to this wonderful story. And therefore, Shukabra Maharishi says, in all religious performances, if this story is recited, then they get the highest benediction. And that is why this story is so special. The Lord taking 3 strides and offering this wonderful vision of his infinite form and also giving this benediction to Bali is invoked even today in so many tellings, in so many discourses and so on. And thereby, so many are getting the wonderful benediction of listening to this story. And we have also listened to the story, and thus concludes this chapter, and also through these set of chapters, the glorious Vamana Avatar, the story of Vamana Avatar. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.